I'm not the person who would be like abolish gender norms. Like, I mean, to some degree, yes, but it's it's I don't see it like something inherently bad. It's what like you actually are making out of it.
Yeah. So more like a post definitions gender norms.
Yeah.
Like choose the gender that you like, go with yourself.
Sure,
With follow
sure.
what you feel and things like that.
Yeah.
And not what you're being told to do.
But also like, you know, now that I figured out my own way of masculinity, I don't need anyone else's definition. I also don't feel like I have the need to, you know, justify myself for like anything. Because I now, you know, at the age of 25, I feel comfortable. I feel very comfortable in my skin.
Awesome.
And that was a long journey, but made it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Post Definitions podcast. I'm your host, Freddie Lancia.
And I'm David, or you can call me Dato in Georgia.
Wow. We're back still in Georgia, the country, not the state. And, well, we're continuing talking about identity. We're talking about, well, identity in Georgia, in this very interesting place. We're also connecting to past episodes about German identity, about Hungarian identity, about gay identity. So I'm really excited to have David here today, Dato. And he's got a lot of interesting stuff to say, like always, like all the amazing people I meet in this great big world. But I've got a really good feeling about this. So let's dive in and get a little bit of background on are you German? Are you Hungarian? Are you gay? And
So far, all three of them.
wow. and how so? And we'll start with that, and then we will and we'll go from there. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So basically, like a short background of me is I'm half German, half Hungarian. So my dad is from Germany, and I was born and raised in Hungary, around Budapest. And 3 years ago, I decided to move to Berlin to pursue my master's studies. And that's how I ended up also in Georgia, because last year I did one exchange semester here, which ended up being like much more defining year, not just academically, but like on a personal and like all different kind of levels. And I developed like this strong bond, and now I'm back for a while.
Welcome. Until 2 more days. Sad.
Yeah. I mean, I plan to come here for 2 weeks. Now it's 5. So I really love it here, but yeah, I can't wait to be back next time. There is always like 1,000 reasons to come back, and the list never gets shorter. Like, I think it's exactly the contrary. You know, the more time I spend here, the more I'm
Okay.
pulled back.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the first time you came to Georgia, it wasn't just an exchange. You also do something where your studies connect with the country you're in, right?
Exactly. Like I left Hungary for like many reasons, but one of the reasons was that like our like social political situation got like so bad that like mentally I was ready to just like make the step towards going to Germany. And when I was there, I realized that like I can't really let go of studying Eastern Europe, because I study sociology. Maybe that's irrelevant in this context. So I'm very interested in like society, culture, and politics. And while I was in Germany, I got like more and more deeper into these things, more than I did when I was living back home in Hungary. And that's how like the idea kind of like came to pick Georgia as a destination. And when I was here, like I connected and related to so many social issues. And I mean, not just social issues, but that was like one big part of it. And that's why, of course, it was not just for studying. but that was the main reason.
Yeah. So what did you study when you were here? Did you work on a project that was related to Georgia?
Actually, no. I worked for fact on a project that was linked to Hungary a lot. It was about the anti-LGBT laws in Hungary and like how civil society is in this very difficult position. And there were like so many parallels to Georgia that I found personally very interesting, although like the context is quite different, but yet very similar. And then I thought, I'm going to write my master thesis maybe about Georgia. But then eventually I decided not to do so, which is a bit like paradoxic in a sense, because I'm like so interested and invested in this country. But I didn't want to like make it like my academic work later on.
Like you thought that maybe it would take away from your personal experience here to make it so academic, or?
Not necessarily, but what I noticed, for example, when I like touched on Hungarian things, is that you're emotionally involved a lot, which is not necessarily bad, but it definitely makes like empirical work more difficult. And if it's like, for example, like a big body of work, like a master thesis, you're constantly facing these difficult situations. And that's not always the exposure you want to do.
But you did choose to do it about Hungary.
Yes.
So,
well, it's a little Stockholm syndrome, I would say. You know, like I can't really let go, and I don't want to let go of like a lot of things. And maybe this is also like where a strong identity was also like being formed. That for me, I never saw it like, for example, like just like a school paper that I'm writing. Like I am genuinely interested and curious about like learning a lot of things, and I do it mainly for my own purpose, because I never know like how this is gonna manifest in the future. To like Hungarian topics or like Georgian topics, like topics that are actually difficult to deal with on a personal level, because they're very important to me. But for example, to do so or to see it in this point of view, I think that more strongly developed once I was outside of Hungary. Like it got stronger. My Hungarian identity got stronger while I was in Germany. Although it was also the time for me when I was discovering my own German identity more.
Yeah.
Like I speak native German, and I've been in Germany a lot of times. I have family there, but I never lived there. So that was also like new. So I don't know, the last 3 years were like very transformative for me on a personal level as well.
I mean, that makes sense that like when I'm in the US, I don't think of myself as American, but when I'm outside of the US, I think of myself as American, right? You see the contrast, and you see what you carry with you and what you can't escape about your own identity, right? So I think that's what you mean when you say you found your Hungarian identity in Germany.
I mean, founding is maybe not the right word to use, because I definitely think that identity is fluid and you don't really arrive at a certain destination. But I definitely found a new way to connect to it, which is, you know, interesting.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, like sometimes I think these things are like really hard to form into words necessarily, but of course, like you're never limited to just because you're from like a certain country or you grew up in a certain way. You're like not limited to be that person forever. Like you have a lot of, like humans have a lot of freedom to choose their own, you know, path, and there is a lot that you can change. But I believe that actually the way you grow up, the social settings, the cultural settings, the values, like the whole, you know, this whole habitus that you are born into, you carry that into your life. And it's again different when you exist in the context of something and then go abroad, for example, or like you've been taken out of that. So it just puts a different angle to it.
Yeah. And in your case, when you came to Germany,
Yeah.
can you say something about how you brought your Hungarian identity?
Yeah. Well, like, I don't know. Like, it's an interesting question, because I realize that I probably feel more Hungarian than German, although I'm a mix of both. But even when I was in Germany, I started to make friends with other people who also had like migration backgrounds or with their family, and it was a bit hard for me to connect to like the normal German middle class, for like different reasons. And these reasons that I like experienced like when I moved to Berlin, it's kind of like also the same things that like I saw within my family. Just differences between how my like nephews or like how my relatives in Germany grew up or how they lived compared to like how I was more exposed to within like in Hungary. And I think it's just more like the sense of belonging that I felt more. Like maybe that answers the questions, and maybe this is even less related to like being Hungarian per se, but it's more says about more like the other backgrounds that I lived in.
You mean like this says more that you were a foreigner in Berlin and you're connecting to other foreigners, or what do you mean by the other backgrounds?
With the other backgrounds, I mean more that like my Hungarian side is more of a working class setup. It's more like simple people who had to like work a lot in their life to like get where they are now, and they also had to move abroad. Like I'm not the first person from my Hungarian side who was moving to Germany, and I'm not saying that like, you know, everything was easy for like my German settings. Like for example, my dad, he's also like the first one who achieved his like high school and then later university education. It was the same for my mom. So in that sense, like they both were like very like pioneers within the family. It's just like different, you know, settings. I think they had a bit more comfortable life, or like they had at least to face like different issues. And I didn't feel foreign in Germany. Like not foreign in that sense. Like, you know, Berlin is also so mixed. I think you don't really have this like, oh, there are the Germans and there is like everyone else, because it's the lines are a bit like more blurred.
Okay. But what about these normal middle class Germans you're talking about?
Yeah. I don't know. It's just different. It's I am not surrounded by them in Berlin so much. I mean, like I'm in my study bubble. I'm in my, you know, young adults going through life kind of things. I think I would struggle more if I would like live somewhere else in Germany, like a smaller city.
For sure, Berlin is like, it's totally different.
Yeah, it's not conservative at all, for example, which I like. And I don't think, you know, like if I want to necessarily live somewhere else within Germany, because it's just so different.
Yeah.
And exactly like this diversity like helped me a lot, and connect to also like other people who are like having a very mixed like family background, whether they're like first or second generation immigrants, or they're like half or not half. It just made more sense to me.
Yeah.
For some reason.
To connect with people that have a complicated identity like yourself.
Yeah. And you know, shared like biographical struggles. And like, you know, like now I'm like, I don't want to put myself in this like victim position where I'm like, oh, I'm a foreigner in Germany, because I look German. Like I know people perceive me as German. They don't realize that maybe I'm like a foreigner. So I have it fairly easy. Like I have relatively easy compared to like other people. Because yeah, like let's not pretend that Germany doesn't have, for example, a racism problem. Or like very big structural problems. But I think it's more like a mental question for me, that like I always feel more empathy and solidarity with like people who, you know, similarly to me, maybe had to move a country for a better living.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of great for you that you can connect both with Germans in that sense that they might accept you,
Yeah.
and also foreigners who you can relate to.
Yeah.
And who are there are a lot of in Berlin, and people are also open to talk about these things.
I sometimes feel like I'm like a little bridge, you know, bridging cultures or just between people. And I think this duality is a very center theme in my life in like so many aspects.
Yeah.
You know, like I also come from a patchwork family, a politically very divided family. And I mean, it's not always easy, like, you know, being in the middle and being like this diplomatic bridge.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility I didn't choose as a child, but I was forced to do it. But I mean, that also kind of made me, this is going to be such a cliche, this made me who I am today.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's what brought you to Georgia in the sense that now you like to play this role of like, you're curious about cultures and identity and social problems, and that's why you study sociology.
Yeah.
And
sure.
You are clearly not like, so I have like a Bosnian friend who said like, oh yeah, you know, if we go to Georgia together, we thought about going to Georgia together. I'm not getting involved in politics because I grew up in Bosnia. Like, I've had enough of that shit. You know, I don't want to deal with this kind of social problems. But you, who grew up maybe dealing with a complicated identity, as we've been calling it, you want more. You want to come to Georgia and learn about another thing, and you like to relate to people. Is that?
I relate to the Bosnian guy actually a lot.
Okay.
Although like my actions maybe say or show the contrary. I mean, like, if we talk about like Hungarian politics or Hungarian society, or like how this whole country is built up and how it functions today, I totally get when people when they don't want to be involved into politics. It is so much easier to look away, and you know, it's also like a survival strategy. Like, it's not necessarily always laziness. However, and this is maybe like also one of my core elements of my personality, that I really do believe in like activism and agency. And I definitely had times where I was like so burned out by these topics, like when I left Hungary, for example, which was also around the time where they passed a very discriminatory law against LGBT, like it's called the anti-LGBT law. Officially, it's a law to protect children, but it has nothing to do with protecting children. It's a very like pseudo-Christian set of values. It's more like a political tool, but it does impact people's lives. So at that time, I was just like, I cannot deal with this. Like, I cannot be exposed to this kind of rhetoric on a daily basis. I need to go. And I had the privilege to move to Germany. So I did it. But then once I was there, I thought like, oh, like now I'm going to live my life. You know, I'm just going to be a Berliner. I'm going to get my matcha latte. I'm going to, you know, go to the clubs, have my little life, have my little open gay life, you know, have my hookups, have this and that. I mean, like, none of these are bad. I love to do all of them. But I just felt this urge to like, no, actually, I'm someone in a position who I actually feel qualified for, that, like, you know, I'm, you know, I want to, you know, provoke change. I want to help. I want to like be involved. But that's also like, you know, it's an up and down kind of thing. So if your Bosnian friend says that he wants to go abroad or here and he doesn't want to deal with it, I totally relate to that, because it takes a lot of mental tool. And you're also not, you know, it's not something you have to do. It's something that you can choose. And if you choose it, then that's great. If you not choose it, then that's also understandable.
Yeah. It sounds like you needed like a break, and you needed to find your happiness. And then you say, okay, now that I'm calm, now that I'm in a good position, maybe I want to return to that because that's one of your passions. But there's so many different ways to be a good person. You don't have to do it in that way. You don't have to like help a social problem just because you grew up in a society that had problems.
Exactly. Like that's also, like that's not my point that I wanted to make.
No. I think we're agreeing with each other.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many things where you can also like, if you have this like helping attitude towards the world, it's like it starts from like the smallest personal level. And you don't like, like yesterday I've been to the protest and I've showed up and like, I only missed one protest in the past 5 weeks that happened here in Georgia since the elections, which is great. I chose it. No one forces me to do it.
Yeah,
that's
nice.
My things.
Nice.
You don't have to. Like there is also other ways, if you're interested in this, where you can like, help things out. I feel like everyone is, that's what I think, as long everyone is contributing to like the bigger good in their own ways.
In their own way, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. How do you think that identity should play a role into what you should or can help with? So like, let's say there's two examples. Like there's a protest in Hungary. How should Hungarian people play a role versus foreigners? And same with in Georgia, because now you're in both positions.
That's actually a very good question. I was wondering that myself. Let's start with Georgia. I am not Georgian. In that sense, it is not directly my struggle. I choose to show up because I feel a lot of empathy and understanding and anger. And this country welcomed me as a guest, and I feel like I want to give something back. And this is not the first time I experience such a huge democratic backsliding. So, like there is a very big personal relatability. But even if I wouldn't have this personal level, like my other friends from like different countries who also show up at the protest, they might have not went through something similar, but still they're engaging. And maybe that's also just like a, civic duty or whatever you want to call it, which I think is great. But of course we're foreigners, like we're guests. It is not, I would never want to like make a speech because it's, that's not my position. My position is here to support, if I want to. In Hungary, I'm going to be a bit more critical because I think that a lot of people are completely comfortable in like this apathy where they just don't care. And
Hungarian people.
Yes. And what I saw in Georgia, or especially in Tbilisi more, that there is a strong sense of solidarity also within like groups. And I don't want to over idealize it because, Tbilisi is also still a bubble. But here, I had the feeling that the solidarity is like much higher than it is in Hungary.
Could that be because you're meeting people like at protests and so on? And like in Hungary, you knew so many people like through other sources and from, I don't know.
That's a varied question too, because it can be a bias, but in generally like Hungarian society is just very like they have a lot of like they don't have a lot of trust in other people. And I think over the time, and it's probably also a historical legacy that we never learned how to deal with. I feel that everyone just shuts up and is choosing the path of being more like comfortable, instead of actually like, stick out the crowd and just go. And, it has layers. Like if you're afraid to lose your job, that's, I will not judge people for not showing up. But in generally, I think that the whole political system is designed in a way that it forces people to not care. And that's bad because then it gives you the feeling that you cannot change your own country or your own, future. And if we see it in a societal level, like on a macro level, you still need this little people to come together and, you know, do something better.
Yeah. So I know like just a little bit from my experience in Georgia, and I think that you say that people don't trust each other in Hungary, but of course I think Georgia is divided because they of course don't trust the government, and they don't trust also a large group of other Georgians, and that's why the protests are happening, because for your information, they are protesting against supposed rigging of the elections that just happened. And so basically there's a huge lack of trust, but at least there's a group of people that can unite and be together against that. And another point that I've come across is that Georgians, like you said, they might also worry about something like losing their job or more consequences than a foreigner might. So it's something to consider, that when we go to a protest, we're not risking as much potentially.
For sure.
Because it does seem like Georgians are more likely to get arrested, more likely to suffer consequences by the future government and current. Yeah. And so, when we do something in Georgia, we take less of a risk. Like,
I also, like, obviously, like, I feel like I don't want to, you know, reduce this question of identity, for example, so much on politics. But I think my identities have been shaped so much around the surroundings, or like the social systems around me, that this just plays like such a central role. And like, this is also the same with being gay, you know. I sometimes I think like I could have had a much easier life theoretically growing up, like in Germany, for example. It's not that Germany doesn't have, like, you know, homophobic or transphobic incidents, like they do, but in generally, like, you have an easier life. But, you know, this is a bit like a stupid thought. Like, this is not how my life went, and I am not, you know, like, regretting growing up in like Hungary, or like having like the hardships that I had. But this is, you know, just something that fundamentally shaped me later.
Yeah. Can you tell me what it was like to grow up gay in Hungary, and to discover yourself, to come out?
Yeah. I mean, like, Hungary is not the worst place. It's not the best place. It really depends on the place I think you're at. Budapest is an amazing city. It's, you know, it's unpaid advertisement. Go visit Budapest. But you know, like, if you're more like on the countryside, or like in the smaller communities, like, people tend to be more like conservative. And now I think also, like, things changed, even though like now we have like such worse homophobic rhetoric on a state level that there was not before. I think genuinely, like, it's slowly but like gaining more acceptance, which is great. But, you know, like, I felt really alone growing up. I had no one to relate to. I had no information. I had no idea what this is. And like, I was labeled gay before I was even gay. I had no idea what that was. You know, every time this word, you know, popped up in a conversation, it was like associated with something negative. So like, there was like such a big like shame. I also like stopped basically every hobby that I had. Like, I was, for example, I was in a church community. I was dancing. I did like folk dance. If I like did like sports, like I was riding a horse or whatever, like, it is so rural coded, but, you know, like, I ended up stopping all of that because I felt like I'm a little alien, like I'd never fit in. And that was hard. And I had a very like cute, genuinely nice group of friends, luckily. So, you know, we were like the little outcasts.
How old were you?
I refer to like a time period between I'm like first grade or maybe like 8th, 9th grade.
Okay. So like you were like
that's elementary school for us. It's between like 6 and 14.
Okay. And people could already get the feeling that you're gay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, even like as a child, I said like fuck to gender norms. I was wearing like a lot of like, I loved skirts. I made like bandanas and I put them up like hair, and I was very female presenting.
That's very cool. Was there a time where you were like, no, I can't do that? And
Yes.
you went back to being a boy.
And I actually know exactly when it was. Like they allowed me to do so until I went to school. And I remember like my dad had to put up so much fight with, for example, like my grandparents, my Hungarian grandparents, who like, I'm sure they didn't mean bad, but they were like, okay, he's a kid, he can do it. Weird, but whatever. But if he goes to school, this has to stop. And that was also
Your
like,
dad was defending you, or
yeah,
that's
yeah.
nice.
I mean, also, you know, later with like, you know, my coming out and how everything like went. I'm not saying that he was like the best dealing with this, because I think he was also, you know, not really prepared for that, or like, yeah. I'm not trying to find excuses, but like I like it wasn't the easiest, but at least like I had the feeling that I will be okay around him eventually. And especially when I was like a kid, I needed that support a lot more. And yeah, I think it was also like a very pivotal moment in maybe my personal development, when I was starting to be told what to do, what to not do. And you learn this whole like codex of like what you can say, how you can present yourself, what to avoid. And also like in Hungarian school, it was a lot gender divided. So I was forced to be around like boys, for example, a lot more, who bullied me a lot. So most of my friends were like, I had female friends. I most of the time I was surrounded by girls, and that changed only later. And that was also like through my teenage years, I went through like a lot of like also like gender dysmorphia, because I was not sure like, am I a guy? Am I something between? I know that I was not a girl, but like my masculinity didn't fit into like the idea of, you know, what was expected from me. And I struggled with that a lot. And now I feel like I'm comfortable, and like I see myself as like a male cis person, but I also like, you know, it's the Beyond Definition podcast. Right?
Yeah,
did I say it right?
definition.
Post.
Exactly. No,
fuck.
but that's what it
Post.
means.
Yes.
It's
So like we're
synonym.
talking about like post definitions.
Yeah, like what does it mean after to be a boy, but then also like fuck what it means to be a boy.
Yes.
Yeah.
and this is also so interesting, because sometimes labels can help you a lot. You know, like if you, for example, if you're a non-binary person and you come across this label of like what is non-binary, like, you know, like you get familiar with this concept, you find yourself, you know, maybe with like people you can relate to, which is super important. However, like if it then again, it's like this label turns into something that's going to limit your personality, or like the same with being gay, or the same with belonging to a certain country, and this puts you in a box, then of course like this is not what maybe this was intended for.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You watched some of the Anton podcast. And
Yes.
I asked him about what the relationship between femininity and masculinity and being gay is, or sexuality. And he basically told me that for him, these things are not the same. And for him, he is gay, but all of his friends are male. And he's just always around men. And he generally has always just like not seen a connection between being gay, meaning he's more feminine or something. And you obviously had a different experience.
I did. This again shows that within one label, there is so much diversity, like, you know, like within the gay community as well. And, you know, and that's again coming to your question, for example, like how is it being gay in Hungary? I think in generally, like if you are a cis male presenting person who people cannot pinpoint you walking down the street like, oh, he's a gay, then you have it easier, of course. if you fall out of this normality, then it's more difficult. And I think for me, it was shaped a lot by having this experience of like, you know, just like not fitting in so much. And, you know, probably that's also why I just generally like tend to be more like I have more female friends than male ones. This changed over time. In like my bachelor in university, I also like started to have more gay friends, for example. But also like I met some like very nice straight dudes who I felt comfortable with. But the bigger change was actually in Germany. Like I now I have like very deep friendships with straight men. And I value it a lot, actually. Not because they're straight, but because like they don't treat me different.
Maybe that was the problem all along. Like maybe the reason why you weren't as friends with as many boys or as many straight men is because they were just not accepting and they were bullying you.
And like the amount of bullying that I also got when I was like a kid, I realized after like a while that like I don't even know how to, you know, behave around like straight men or like how to let go, because all my basic instincts were like, he's a man, like, you know, like, and I'm not saying that, you know, like I haven't luckily experienced like, for example, like physical violence, or like it wasn't like that hard. Like I don't want to paint like the wrong picture here, but it's just like subtle microaggressions to like verbal stuff, but it leaves a mark on people. It really does.
Of course. That's it's really interesting. I feel like that might explain also why I had more male friends when I was growing up, because I could say as well, like, I don't know how to talk to girls like when I was a kid or when I was a teenager. Like, I don't understand them. I have a feeling that they're thinking things that they're not saying, you know, like I can't trust them. I feel like we're different. Not that they're bullying me, but something like it's not that I didn't like femininity or I didn't connect with girls. It's just that I don't understand them. And that's scary. You know what I mean? And maybe that's also how you felt with the guys. I mean, to a much greater extent with the...
But, you know, like, I think it's, to some extent, it's like also something totally normal. Like, you know, gender is a social construct. That's like a big statement. But, like, it, you know, it creates reality. Like, the way we're also being raised, or, like, what a given society is, you know, associating with a certain gender. Like, for example, you saying like, maybe they're like not saying what they mean, I don't understand. And yeah, like, it does make a difference. It does make a difference. It's not something bad. Like, I'm not the person who would be like, abolish gender norms. Like, I mean, to some degree, yes, but it's it's I don't see it like something inherently bad. It's what like you actually are making out of it.
Yeah. So more like a post definitions gender norms.
Yeah.
Like choose the gender that you like, go with yourself.
Sure.
Follow what you feel and things like that.
Yeah.
And not what you're being told to do.
But also, like, you know, now that I figured out my own way of masculinity, I don't need anyone else's definition. I also don't feel like I have the need to, you know, justify myself for like anything, because I now, you know, at the age of 25, I feel comfortable. I feel very comfortable in my skin.
Awesome.
And that was a long journey, but I made it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's huge.